This is a republic, if you can keep it, with Mark Brewer and Jeff Timmer.
I'm Mark Brewer. Welcome to the Canadian Bacon Might Fry the Republicans episode of A Republic, if you can keep it.
I'm Jeff Timmer. I take a week off, and just like that, Trump starts another war. This time with me smack ass in the middle of it. I was in Canada's Maritimes and was then in the wake of Trump's attack. I was attacked with Canadian kindness, poutine, real beef, and not diseased Argentinian horse meat, the best lobsters and oysters in the hemisphere, and the inability of artisans and merchants to ship their goods to their traditional U.S. partners, or even for me to ship purchases home due to the economically illiterate tariffs and self-destructive, imbecilic trade war with our closest cousins. Trump's war could really cost him, eh? Seriously, close Senate races and gubernatorial races in Michigan, Wisconsin, Maine, Ohio, especially, they're already being impacted by the economic turmoil spinning off Trump's latest stupidity, and that's really just too bad for John James and Mike Rogers.
Jeff, it sounds like you almost didn't want to come home, but I'm glad you're back. Trump spent much of this week focused on his number one issue, naming things after him, including another effort to put his name on the Kennedy Center despite a court order, threatening to tear down the center if he doesn't get his way, stripping the name of a World War II hero off a new aircraft carrier, reportedly instead renaming it for himself, while ordering the Navy to spend billions of dollars to redesign carriers so they look like World War II carriers and revert to outdated steam-powered launch systems, inscribing a plaque on his under-construction helipad with his signature, clearly delighted that his new granite slab outside the White House will be a great place for cocktail parties. And finally, reportedly deciding to use his $400 million political bankroll to run an advertising blitz on the greatness of Trump, instead of directly supporting beleaguered Republican candidates.
Yeah, Trump's edifice complex is on full display. But Michigan Republicans are trying desperately to avoid the Trump name game now that the primary and nominating conventions are over. At their weekend state convention, none of the candidates for state office mentioned Donald Trump's name even once. Their focus was trying to put lipstick on the pig that is Trump and the GOP's record on the economy. And I wish them all the smashing luck as they contort themselves into cartoonish pretzels in their futile efforts to avoid being fatally tethered to Donald Trump's venereal disease level job approval this fall.
Those same Michigan Republicans are also reeling from what appears to be a growing blue wave, as this week the nonpartisan Cook Political Report moved two Michigan congressional races away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. In the Macomb County-based 10th District, the report moved it from lean Republican to toss-up, and in the Saginaw Bay region, represented by Kristen McDonald-Rivet, that 8th District was moved from lean Democratic to likely Democratic.
State Democrats are sharpening their verbal axes as we approach the traditional Labor Day launch of the fall campaign. The Canada trade war drew immediate fire from Lieutenant Governor nominee Winnie Brinks and 10th District congressional candidate Christina Hines.
These tariffs will have real consequences for people across Michigan. They will drive up costs at a time when families are already struggling with the cost of groceries, gas, and housing. And they will put even more pressure on Michigan's manufacturers and small businesses that depend on strong trade with Canada. But Donald Trump isn't the only person Michiganders should be looking at. John James has enthusiastically supported Trump's trade war. In February, James voted in favor of tariffs on Canada. He had a chance to stand up for Michigan families, workers, and business, but instead, he chose to support Trump's tariff agenda. And now, as these new 50% tariffs take effect, John James has not said a single word. And that silence matters.
Businesses are fighting just to stay open. In my district, we were promised America First, and a lot of folks around here believed that President Trump and John James would deliver on that promise. But that is not what we are getting, and families like ours are paying the price.
Senator Alyssa Slotkin, in a speech to UAW leadership, said a longer-term threat posed by the trade war is Canada's growing partnership with China on sales of EVs, and Trump then allowing those cars across the Gordie Howe Bridge.
The president is meeting with the president of China in September. They have a big summit, big deal. And all we keep hearing is that the president is going to make a deal to let our first Chinese vehicles be sold in the United States. And let me just tell you, no matter what the president says about how he supports industry and manufacturing, if he supports labor, all the things that he pretends to do, and let me say pretend, there will be no going back if he allows those vehicles in our country. We cannot allow it to destroy our auto industry and our manufacturing base overall by letting those cars into the country.
Abdul El-Sayed is highlighting the obvious challenge facing Mike Rogers in the Senate campaign. Does Rogers risk angering Donald Trump, breaking with him on issues beginning with the Trump-created Iran war and the emerging hot-button issue of data centers?
He's stuck, again, between what the voters actually want and what Donald Trump and the corporations who control him want. And so he's shooting from the hip because, for him, he'd rather not actually answer questions. This is what happens when he doesn't dodge. He took one question and it ended up in, like, policy turmoil. So this clown car of a campaign trying to tout their support from Democrats gets caught not having an actual position, proposes a position they can't actually do anything about, which is contrapositive to what he actually has said his entire campaign and what he benefits from.
Perhaps the most ominous development of the week came from the very Trumpy Supreme Court, which has started to open the door maybe for a federal takeover of elections. Without ruling on the merits of Trump's post office deciding who gets to vote, Chief Justice John Roberts gave Trump permission to begin implementing his executive order. So much confusion surrounds this, and I think we all know that's what Trump wants.
It was all part of a bizarre week that could probably be summed up in two words: Lake America, as Trump's latest Sharpie-labeled change to world maps envisions changing Lake Ontario to Lake America.
Here in Michigan, we have more developments on state ballot proposals the voters will or won't see this November. Both of the stories this week directly involving you, Mark. You've been on a winning streak, my friend, in your election-related battles. Why don't you take a couple minutes and update the listeners?
Well, this week, the State Board of Canvassers, the bipartisan body that you once sat on, Jeff, that's charged with deciding whether ballot proposals qualify for the ballot, decided not to put the citizenship documentation proposal on the ballot. They followed the recommendation of the nonpartisan professional staff at the Bureau of Elections, which thoroughly analyzed the signatures. My clients and I also joined into that process, challenging hundreds of signatures. But the staff, in the end, determined that there were not enough signatures, Jeff, to get on the ballot. But we had a day-long meeting on Monday at which the board, to its credit, went over every aspect of the Bureau's report, looked at dozens, scores, maybe even hundreds of affidavits and petitions, but in the end decided there were not enough signatures to put it on the ballot. That's where it now sits. The supporters of this proposal have threatened to go to the Michigan Supreme Court. And as you and I record here today, we've yet to see that, but I fully expect that to happen. And the Michigan Supreme Court will have the final word on whether this proposal goes on the ballot.
Yeah. Well, given the just the logistics that are required just practically and statutorily for Michigan election clerks to print ballots and have an orderly process that has everything in place at the right times, we're running up against some very real deadlines here on the calendar for the appellate process to work out. It doesn't have there isn't an indefinite time period here. It would have to be very expedited. And really, what, by maybe this point next week or by the end of next week, would have to have an appeal and the state Supreme Court either rule on the merits of the appeal one way or the other, or deny the appeal, or what? Just just do nothing. What are the options here, and is that timeline correct?
Yeah, Jeff, those are the three options. The court could accept the appeal and order this proposal on the ballot. There's also an appeal pending on the Michiganders for Money Out of Politics proposal, which is currently on the ballot. That's the proposal which would prohibit utilities and contractors from making contributions. It does a lot of other things. That one's on the ballot, but there is an appeal pending on that. And then the court does have three options. Order one or both of these on or off the ballot, or do nothing. I doubt they will do nothing. Michigan courts have been very good about handling election matters very expeditiously. But you're right. Late next week is the deadline to get the ballot content certified so that clerks, and they're already working on this, as you know, get the ballots ready to be printed, because by the third week of September, ballots have to be available, certainly to overseas voters, and then shortly thereafter, mailed out to everybody on the permanent list, and for anybody who walks into a clerk's office and wants to vote an absentee ballot on the spot.
Yeah, and that's not just, like I say, it's not just logistical and it's not just statutory. That's what the Constitution has been amended to require, is having that kind of early access for voters. And
Right.
so that has to be met. And it's not the kind of thing that is easily movable even by a court, given the constitutional authority that mandates that. And so, yes, it will be interesting to watch. Let's also give our listeners, you've shared this across social media, and I know in the certainly in the Board of Canvassers, who I have to commend, earned their $75 the other day for the meeting to sit there 6 hours and go over that. But you've indicated the not just the problems with the sample, but the enormity of the sloppiness that went into that petition drive, the hundreds of thousands of mistakes that you guys identified with this. Can you just kind of enlighten folks a little bit about that?
Sure, Jeff. We've come to call this the crayon petition drive because as we examine the petitions, they actually tried to strike out lines using crayon, which, among other things, obviously comes off. So there's no permanent record of what you were trying to strike, but it was symbolic of the terrible petition drive. I've been doing petition drives in this state since the 80s. It's one of the worst ones I've ever seen. Based on our examination and the examination of the professional staff, I would estimate that over 100,000 of the signatures that were filed were of people who weren't registered to vote in the city or township where they claimed, some not registered at all. I believe, based again on analysis, that there were tens of thousands of duplicate signatures. We found over 100 duplicates in just the small sample we examined. As came out at the Board of Canvassers meeting on Monday, there were dead people whose signatures were turned in. There were signatures, thousands and thousands of them, which were stale, that they were collected outside the window for collecting signatures. So despite the volume of signatures that was filed here, this was one of the worst quality petition drives I've ever seen. And frankly, it's no surprise to me that they fell short of the signatures required.
Yeah. Well, I think that it is poetic irony that this ballot initiative petition drive seeking to add confidence and security to our election process to ensure that fraud does not occur is so comically, ham-handedly rife with mistakes and fraud and duplication. And I know that there's not a practical way to cross-reference the signatures against citizenship, but I would be, given the enormity of the problems with this, I wouldn't be surprised if there are non-citizen signatories as well. We may never know, but I think it's a fairly reasonable probability.
Yeah, Jeff, again, this thing is just so full of mistakes. As you and I know from our experience, any petition group that normally would file 750,000 signatures should be a no-brainer. They should get on the ballot. But the moment you lifted the hood on this proposal and looked at underneath what was going on behind the scenes, it was a disaster. This group that put it on the ballot has wasted millions of dollars trying to put this thing on the ballot, and hopefully there'll be some accountability for that on their side of the aisle.
Well, Mark, let's go back and talk a bit more about this latest trade war, and not just isolated in and of itself. The pattern over the last year and a half plus of Donald Trump's second administration, and these unforced errors with tariffs and igniting trade wars with traditional allies and global partners. At the expense of U.S. consumers, U.S. jobs, U.S. retailers, U.S. manufacturing, U.S. The U.S. economy, and the adding to the anxiety and real economic pressure on American families as they vote this fall. This is just another layering on top of the compounding exponential idiocy that has taken place virtually every day of the Trump administration. Does this, because of the proximity to Canada, impact a state like Michigan and our politics and our elections more so? Is it a more salient campaign issue here than, say, in Arizona? How do you see it?
Absolutely, Jeff. I mean, and Michigan listeners know this, how integrated, for example, the auto industry is. I mean, there are trucks carrying parts of cars crossing our international border hundreds, thousands of times a day. I mean, for all practical purposes, there is no border when it comes to the auto industry because they move parts and cars back and forth so much. And these tariffs are going to pose a particularly terrible burden on the auto industry, and Michigan is the center of that industry. And you've already heard auto industry folks discreetly, they've got to be careful. Obviously, they don't want to offend Trump, but candidly saying this is a disaster for the auto industry, the tariffs at these levels. And I think an important development here, Jeff, not a political one necessarily for us domestically, is that Prime Minister Mark Carney has said, we're not going to kowtow to Trump. I mean, he's standing up. And we're going to impose retaliatory tariffs if Trump puts his into place, and they've already started, Trump's has. So, this is not something that Canada is going to roll over. Mark Carney is not going to bow down to Trump. And so that means this economic disaster is coming. It's started, and it's going to get worse. And it is going to have the political impact that you described on top of everything else. And it's not just cars, Jeff. I mean, there's a lot of products that go back and forth in Michigan. Turns out Michigan gets oil and natural gas from Canada. We get lumber products. I mean, there's a lot of things that people may not normally think about that we get from Canada, and they are all affected by this. It's going to drive prices up. It's going to cost people jobs. And Republicans, whether they want to acknowledge it or not, whether they're trying to hide from their association with Trump or not, are going to pay the price in November for this economic chaos.
Yeah, and Mark Carney, I think he has emerged as perhaps the leading voice, at least economically, of the traditional Western security and economic alliance is in the wake of the turmoil in the UK with changing leadership and the abdication of that role traditionally filled by the United States by Donald Trump. I think Carney said it well. I mean, to paraphrase, I mean, he effectively said, you can't sign a deal and negotiate with people who are demonstrably starting from bad faith. I mean, it's a
can't trust
a deal with it's just a deal with Trump is not worth the toilet paper it's written on, recall that we got here because Trump unilaterally jettisoned the 1990s era NAFTA deal. Okay, but then created a new deal In Canada, Mexico signed a North American, whatever they call it, free trade agreement 2.0. And so when Trump comes back into office and, immediately throws out the deal, just
right,
that he negotiated and signed as a promise. You have to make economic because Trump doesn't understand business, despite the gibbering talking points of the right. Though he's a businessman, he knows what he's doing. He's a great negotiator. Trump doesn't know how to negotiate. He doesn't understand business. You have to have stability, predictability of the tax structure, the regulatory structure. And if it changes on a whim, if Trump wakes up on the gibbering, barking lunatic side of the bed, which is 360 on his bed, you can't operate trade policy based on something that could change at any moment, any day, without predictability. And so, you look at what Trump has done with the economy. You look at what Trump has done with our alliances, both security and economic alliances, and what damage could a foreign foe do in addition to what Trump is already doing. And when you look at what he's done to our culture and our economy and our security, I've made the argument, I made it yesterday on social media, that in the entire history of this country, there has never been an individual, there has never been a foreign nation enemy, a terrorist group that has done more broad, sustained damage to the United States than Donald Trump. And that includes, if we recall, about 1 million dead people stacked like cordwoods outside of makeshift morgues during COVID.
No, I think that's right, Jeff. I mean, several things here. First, I think this trade war with Canada now is an attempt to distract from having lost the war against Iran, and he's desperately trying to get away out of that, apparently even enlisting Russia through some secret negotiations this week. But you're right about the bigger picture here. All of America's enemies, Russia, China, Iran, they don't have to do a thing because Trump is, burning the country down, threatening our national security, destroying our military, and they haven't had to do a thing. What's the old adage about if your opponent's in the process of, burning themselves down, just let it burn. And that's exactly what the rest of the world is watching. Of course, our allies are petrified by all of this. Can Japan or South Korea or our other allies in Europe count on the United States coming to their assistance? Trump already cast that in doubt. And now, given what he's done to our military, even if the United States wanted to, I'm not so sure we could come to their aid. So across the board, his second term, now only less than 2 years old, has been a complete disaster domestically and on foreign policy front for the United States.
Yeah. And, just to change the subject to a little more pop culture, we had one really national treasure, an 80-year-old Dolly Parton, pass away this week. And then yesterday, an 80-year-old, when I saw an 80-year-old star of Home Alone 2 had died, I immediately, went, oh, good. But, it was the Reaper's getting closer to these 80-year-old who've acted in Home Alone 2 and other things. So, Donald, there's been articles about his significant recent weight gain. His health has been in question since he returned to the White House. The rotted necromancer hands that he has now, and they put makeup on every day to cover up. We'll see. Donald Trump, his kind of physically embodies the fate of the Republicans as they head into the fall. They're bloated, weak, slow, sloppy, bruised, and they're not likely to get better. It's just how long can they hold on, and when do they call in hospice?
Well, Jeff, it's funny because you mentioned beloved actor Tim Curry, who died, who's one of the ones you were referencing. I remember the night my friends took me to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It still, made a vivid impression on me. I remember to this day, it was just a stunning movie, and Tim made a career out of stuff like that. And the much beloved Dolly Parton, who managed to still, in his very divisive time, be loved by all Americans. I think, across the political spectrum, there was so very few of those figures left, and Trump, among other terrible things, is making that worse, right? Polarizing even entertainment, celebrities in this country, so that we don't have that to unite us anymore.
Yeah. Well, in Donald Trump and his, predictable, like clockwork Donald Trump way, when commenting on Dolly Parton's passing, his acknowledgement of it, his send off, she really, really liked me.
Right.
Was Donald
It's
Trump's
all about
comment.
him. It's all about him. Every time, Jeff. Every time.
And in that hour, sir, you gave your word.
More on a republic if you can keep it after these messages.
Then I have no choice but to.
When most of us think about polling, the focus is on those campaign polls telling us which candidates are winning. But the most important polls are for businesses, local governments, and nonprofits assessing the needs and wants of their customers or constituencies.
Those are polls that guide policies and lead to institutional success. Those polls have to get it right, which makes the choice of a public opinion research firm critical. Epic MRA has been trusted for more than 4 decades to get it right. Our clients have included school boards, statewide nonprofits, corporations, as well as the candidates and news media who rely on us during political campaigns. Whether it's just a couple of questions or a full in-depth survey, we are here and ready to help.
You can reach us at epicmra.com.
Are you looking to stay ahead of the curve on Michigan's public policy landscape? Look no further than Michigan Information and Research Service Incorporated, or MERS. MERS is your go-to source for comprehensive, nonpartisan news and analysis on Michigan's government and public policy. But that's not all. A MERS subscription also gives you access to our powerful legislative monitoring and tracking tools. Stay on top of every bill, amendment, and vote with real-time updates, detailed reports, interactive committee transcripts, legislative analysis tools, and more. Whether you're a policymaker, lobbyist, or just a concerned citizen, MERS keeps you informed with daily updates, exclusive interviews, and detailed reports. Subscribe today and gain access to our extensive archives. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay ahead with MERS. Visit MERS.news to learn more and subscribe. That's MIRS.news. Don't miss out on the insights that matter most.
That's all for this week. I depart leaving one last observation. The recently announced $17 billion Facebook court settlement isn't just about the money. Unlike a previous case, it sends the money to the states instead of Trump's January 6 rioters, and it doesn't give Mark Zuckerberg immunity from IRS audits.
And if I'm not in court over the next several days, I am getting packed for what should be a relatively quiet Michigan Democratic Party convention in Lansing, where the party slate of candidates will be formally nominated. And with that, we will be off on the fall election with just 2 months to go.
If the Republic is still standing, we'll be back next week, though possibly broadcasting into Trump's Gilead of dumbfuckery from the proud, free, liberty-loving Dominion of Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
A republic, if you can keep it, is a presentation of Michigan citizens for a better tomorrow.